There is no obligation for the universe to make sense to you. Double, triple, quadruple check your math.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
Quit screwing around and get ready to move.
What are you looking at?
Five, four, three, two, one. Attack commences.
Oh, he's back.
Capture objective A.
There they are. Barrier in place. Breaking the barrier. Barrier. Attack. Out of existence.
Heroes never die.
One moment.
We're gonna do something about that bastard.
Cease resistance. Who's down me?
Observe the barrier.
Imagination is the essence of discovery.
10 seconds remaining.
Die.
Draw. Play of the game. Double kill. Double kill.
Got that retard thing. Got that retard. Can't say it. Oh dear. I told you these biscuits are good. It tastes like just like cheap biscuit. I like that taste.
Oh, well, that was a bust.
More than 20% in Illinois, leading by 10% in Arizona, where 88% of the precincts were reporting as of recording. Right, and so with these results, it brought up more questions about Bernie Sanders' future in this race. Right, and regarding that question this morning, we saw a spokesperson for Bernie say that he was going to assess his campaign. Also this morning, we saw activists reporting that the Sanders campaign suspended their Facebook ads, and they are noting that Buttigieg and Bloomberg both did the same thing hours before they suspended their campaign.
Gibraltar. Prepare to attack. Select your hero.
What's up, guys?
No dying on my watch.
The world decided
It did it.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
I am
Loving this. Everyone signed their life insurance policies?
I'm back in the fight. Hello.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing. Destroy the hero.
Reaches burst. Regen burst activated. Get in here. I found it. Stay on payload. Fully healed. Get in here. Regen burst activated. Get in here, mortality field. Let them up.
Great teamplay.
Coming for you,
I
huh?
am ready to activate the sound barrier.
Get in here. Regen up. Fully healed. Regen up. Can't be attitude positive là.
Dein Schutzengel ist da. Ah, no fair.
That's as good as
I'll be watching over you.
Powered up.
Damage output increased.
my ultimate is
Payload has stalled.
My ultimate is ready.
For your own safety,
I'm taking damage. Damage boost engaged.
Nerf this. Time to wait.
lethal force authorized.
Routing power forward.
Heroes never die. Or
Oh, let's break it!
I'm taking care of it.
Mecha activated.
Damage increase. This is not your time. Damage amplified.
Based on my calculations, this is the likely outcome.
Let me get you patched up.
Team up for special attack. Triple kill. Quadruple.
A clean bill of health. Let me get you patched up. The battle continues. Shadow.
60 seconds minute.
Heroes never die.
Oh, let's break it. Damn!
Damage increase.
All the payload and movement out.
You've got this. I'm taking care of it.
30 seconds.
This is not the end.
Engaging the enemy.
Let's get you that outfit. Under 10 seconds.
Team up for special attack.
Whoa, back to the scrapping.
Score 3-0. Switching sides. Prepare your defenses. Select your hero.
I'll be watching over you.
I'm back in the fight. I can't wait to get into the fight.
Oh, someone on our team. We could have won this.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
I am ready to roll.
Let's get started.
Optimizing strategy.
Powered up.
Lethal force authorized. I recommend moving behind. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Damage.
Attackers incoming.
I could use some assistance.
Behind us, Junkrat.
This is not your time. Shots enemy down. Back in the fight. The battle continues. Right beside you. Stab you. Peak performance. Let me get you patched up. Damage. Damage increase.
Oh, our teammate's back. Nice.
No one can hide from my...
Valkyrie online.
Speaking to here.
Group up with me. Form up. Group up with me.
Group up here.
Group up with me.
Sniper, don't get caught.
Join me. You should be at peak performance level. Enemies over there. I'm taking them.
Where is the team?
Immer unterbricht mich jemand bei der Arbeit. Heilstrahl aktiviert. Damages engaged. I recommend. I'm even stronger. Healing team. Heroes never die. Damage amplified.
Junkrat above us.
Heilstrahl aktiviert.
Everyone heal up.
Peak performance levels. Patching you up. I'm even stronger.
Come here, get stabilized.
Don't stop now. Let me get you patched up.
Don't get greedy, sorry.
Sniper, be careful. You need a doctor?
Where's that Widowmaker at? Behind us?
Help me. I'm hitting them. Fire at will.
Time to raise my
Heroes never die. I'm taking care of it. You've got this. Damage.
Everyone, good choice.
Where does it go? Right beside you.
Good job, Junkrat.
Peak performance. Mercy in the right hand. Damage increase.
all systems checked out.
Good as new.
Someone better get a fire rate, because I'm on a roll.
Team up for special attack.
Damages engaged.
Nerf this.
fight. Damage empty.
30 seconds remaining.
Firing will.
Approaching its destination.
Where does it go? Bob, do something. Fire in the hole. What is new?
Overtime.
Deine Schutz. Heroes never die.
Special attack.
Tactical visor activated.
Start your engines.
Victory. Play of the game.
Nerf this.
Triple kill. Quadruple kill.
I was. Kaylee. What's up, Buffy?
So that's the top level stuff, but I really want to focus on another really big element of these primaries and all the primaries going forward. And that, of course, is the coronavirus. The big question heading into yesterday's primaries was how the just massive escalation of this situation over the last week would affect the elections. Or you even had Trump now saying that we should be social distancing, that there should not be gatherings of more than 10 people. But meanwhile, you essentially had these three states going, nah, it's okay, and they went ahead with the election. Anyway, though, very notably, Ohio was also supposed to have their primary yesterday, but after a lot of legal back and forth, the governor postponed it at the very last minute. Though so according to reports, that created some confusion and some people still turned up to vote. But still, in the other 3 states, you had a lot of people really upset that the elections were still being held and that in-person voting was still going to happen. With some people saying that these elections should be postponed, that it was unsafe, some even saying that it amounted to voter suppression. Meanwhile, you have these election officials in these 3 states saying that they will be taking extra precautions, sanitizing voting machines and other equipment, also providing hand sanitizer wipes and other products to voters, also officials encouraging people to vote by mail or vote early. Additionally, we saw them moving some of their polling precincts away from high-risk areas like assisted living facilities. Right, and so even with all that, there was this big question, how many people are actually going to show up? Or how many people are you going to have comfortable enough to sit in lines together, touch some of the same things as other people? And what we ended up seeing is that while in-person voter turnout was pretty low across the board, in both Florida and Arizona, overall turnout was actually higher than in 2016. This, though, mostly driven by early voting and mail-in ballots. Though, very notably in Maricopa County in Arizona, which includes Phoenix and about half of the state's registered Democrats, in-person turnout was actually higher than in 2016. This, despite the fact that reportedly around 80 polling stations were closed there. But the same could not be said for Illinois, which had low voter turnout on all fronts. Especially in Cook County, which like Maricopa includes the state's biggest city, Chicago, and about half the Democrat voters that cast ballots in the primary. There, according to reports, turnout was down more than 200,000 votes from 2016. But that wasn't the state's only issue. According to reports, there were a lot of precincts and election volunteers that canceled last minute, with one Chicago election spokesperson saying that they had to relocate about 50 polling places at the last minute. And so in addition to health concerns, there's just a lot of confusion. In fact, according to a senior counsel at Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, they were fielding an unprecedented volume of calls from voters confused about where to vote or unsure whether they should leave their homes to cast ballots. And in some of those places, those who did cast ballots in person complained of waiting in long lines for hours in cramped conditions where they couldn't social distance, with some others reporting that precincts didn't have proper cleaning supplies or sanitizer. And despite calls for more people to send in mail-in ballots, according to reports, the fact that polling stations were moved away from nursing homes where many residents vote made it so that it was too late for them to apply for a mail-in ballot, and public health protocols encouraging older people not to be in crowds made it hard for them to go vote in person. And all of that raises a question about mail-in ballots. Right, election officials all over the country are encouraging people to vote by mail amid this pandemic, but a lot of states have strict vote-by-mail laws. Some states require people to apply a certain amount of time ahead of the election, like in Illinois, while others have really specific restrictions on who can vote by mail, like New York, for example, which only lets people cast absentee ballots for 6 very specific reasons, none of which includes a public health emergency. And so with all of this, especially because we do not know how long this will last, there's been a call to overhaul the vote-by-mail system. And actually, yesterday we saw the head of the DNC, Tom Perez, hit on this, saying, as our country deals with the uncertainty of COVID-19, it is critical that states provide clarity and not confusion, which could lead to disenfranchising voters. Also encouraging states to make vote-by-mail available to all registered voters and expand no-excuse voting, and saying where in-person voting can still take place under public health guidelines, states should expand days and hours of early voting to reduce lines. But there are also hurdles to that. As Matt Blaze, an election security expert and computer science professor at Georgetown Law School, explains, rolling something as complex as this out at large scale introduces thousands of small problems, some of which are security problems, some of which are reliability problems, some of which are resource management problems that only become apparent when you do it. And while a big overhaul like that might be really difficult at the state level, there has been some movement at the federal level. In fact, last week, Amy Klobuchar proposed a bill that would expand both vote by mail and early voting nationally, as well as open up federal funds to states to implement those practices. But ultimately, that's pretty much where we are right now. It's going to be very interesting and concerning to see how these primaries and how just voting in general moves forward. I mean, so far you have 5 states delaying their primaries to later. You still have the Democratic convention scheduled for July, though it's unclear what's going to happen with that. And of course, you have the big one in November. What are the state of affairs going to be at that time? It's interesting, concerning time. What are your thoughts regarding this voting situation? It's somewhat easier when we're talking about the primaries, though not completely. Right, when people are talking about the primaries, they're often talking about, Bernie versus Biden. But it's important not to forget that both Democrats and Republicans are voting on other important things, right? Things that affect them on a more local level. Right, so what are your thoughts regarding opening up mail-in voting? What are your thoughts about the people going in person still at this time? I'd really love to hear from you, especially if you've been in one of these recent primary states. And then finally, let's talk about the coronavirus, President Trump, his exchange with governors, and actually what is happening right now. Right, so yesterday we saw this exchange between Trump and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Trump tweeting, failing Michigan governor must work harder and must be more proactive. We are pushing her to get the job done. I stand with Michigan. About an hour later, Whitmer responded, now that I've got your attention, Mr. President, attack tweets won't solve this crisis, but swift and clear guidance, tests, personal protective equipment, and resources would. FYI, here's what I've done so far. Whitmer then going on to list steps she's taken in Michigan, including insured Medicaid waiver for co-pays and cost sharing for testing, declared a state of emergency, closed
thanks for the sub.
schools, restricted entry into care facilities and juvenile justice facilities, enhanced restrictions on price gouging, expanded unemployment benefits. And Whitmer then going on to tell the New York Times, ironically, he made my point that the federal government is not taking this as seriously as they need to, and also saying that Trump has been, quote, watching TV. Right, And so all of that happened after Trump held a conference call on Monday with governors from all over the country. And on that, you had multiple governors reportedly asking for more federal support. But according to the New York Times, Trump then told them, quote,
that's sweet.
respirators,
Yeah,
ventilators,
I'll hit you
all
up.
the equipment, try getting it yourselves. We will be backing you, but try getting it yourselves. Point of sales, much better, much more direct if you can get it yourself. Right? And with that, it seemed that a lot of governors were not happy with that answer. You have New Mexico Governor Lujan Grisham reportedly telling Trump in that call, if one state doesn't get the resources and materials they need, the entire nation continues to be at risk. Also saying the federal government is exceeding states' abilities to respond with violence, as well as creating solutions against one another to be needed. Yesterday, you all tried Whitmer going on TV and saying,
to hear the leader of the federal government tell us to work around the federal government because it's too slow is just, it's kind of mind-boggling, to be honest. We are pulling out all the stops here in Michigan, but we need the federal government to work. We need respirators and ventilators and personal protection equipment. We need more test kits and the resources to process those test kits.
But of course, I do want to mention that Trump did have some support here, that coming in the form of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who said that Trump was telling them to, quote, cut out the federal bureaucracy and potentially get it quicker, arguing what he was saying was sensible. However, and this is a really big however, this all seems to be a part of a much larger picture that's been happening since the outbreak really gained a foothold here in the United States. I mean, you have a lot of other governors who have been clashing with the federal government trying to get support, many of them frustrated. One of the bigger battles we've seen is with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. After that conference call, Cuomo told reporters that the federal government had been behind from day one of this crisis, calling the administration's response inexcusable, which is likely why we saw later that afternoon Trump saying on Twitter, Cuomo of New York has to, quote, do more. Cuomo then responding back, I have to do more? No, you have to do something. You're supposed to be the president. Trump then taking another swing at Cuomo yesterday, telling Cuomo to, quote, keep politics out of it, but right now, it at least appears that Trump and Cuomo are trying to work together. Right? Because after that exchange, we saw Cuomo saying he put his hand out in partnership, telling reporters there's no time for hyper-partisan politicking right now, adding the president is doing the right thing and offering to step up with New York, and I appreciate it. In turn, Trump responded, saying we had a really good talk this morning. We are both doing a really good job. Now, before moving forward into what we're seeing actually happen on the ground, I do want to touch on one thing regarding what is being said, because I greatly believe the actions that are taking place today that we're going to see in the coming weeks and months, that is the most important thing. But I also can't just do that while you have a president of the United States that seemingly wants to gaslight the nation. Right? Yesterday, Trump said this.
I've always known this is a pandemic. I felt it was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic.
But Trump isn't telling the truth here, and we know that for the number of times he knowingly said on camera otherwise. And the recount did actually a pretty great job of consolidating a number of those clips.
Coming in from China.
We think we have it very well under control.
We pretty much shut it down. Coming in from China. You know, in April, supposedly it dies with the hotter weather. When it gets warm, historically, that has been able to kill the virus. The people are getting better. They're all getting better. And the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear, and you'll be fine.
Right, just the consistent downplaying of the situation until the pivot, which, once again, I am happy to see over the past few days. But I point this out because, once again, one of the main criticisms of this president is he did not move fast enough, that the heads up, the head start that we got was wasted. And we'll never fully know how much smaller this could have been if we moved on things sooner and explained to the American public faster from the top down what a big deal this could be. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm happy to see that someone called 911. We really need to wonder and remember why it took so long to get the phone out, right? And that's why you have people like Maryland Governor Larry Hogan saying of the president's recent switch, his messaging sounds a lot more like the way I've been talking and some of my colleagues have been talking about it for weeks. But with all of that said, yesterday we did see Trump finally making a commitment to the states. This by starting to enlist a lot more government agencies, even though the White House has been calling this for a while now a whole government response. Of course, that's despite the fact that states feel otherwise. That, of course, after the situation with ventilators, but also after the mayor of Seattle, which is one of the hardest hit areas, asked for mass tents to rapidly build shelters, and also after New York State pleaded with the Army Corps of Engineers to quickly build hospitals, and actually as of last night, the Army Corps of Engineers said that it will work with New York to find more hospital beds. We've also seen Defense Secretary Mark Esper say that the Pentagon will give up to 5 million masks to protect healthcare workers and vulnerable people, also saying that the first million would be made available immediately. And while it is expected to fall way short of the number needed, the Pentagon also said that it made available 2,000 ventilators for hospitals. We also saw New Mexico Governor Grisham say that Pence had pledged to work with her to increase New Mexico's supply needs. Also, Washington Governor Jay Inslee saying he now expects the Department of Defense to help provide resources that could help bolster new medical hospitals. Additionally, we saw the big news this morning that Trump announced he's invoking the Defense Production Act. Now that, notably, is a Korean War-era law, and what it does is it allows the private sector to ramp up production and distribution of emergency supplies and equipment like masks, ventilators, and respirators. Alongside that, Trump then dispatched 2 military hospital ships to New York City and the West Coast, though, notably, according to reports, reports one of those ships probably won't be deployed for at least another couple weeks. Trump also saying that he's activating FEMA at level 1, which is its highest level. We're also seeing that Housing and Urban Development has been told to suspend all foreclosures and evictions until the end of April. Health and Human Services is suspending regulations that prevent medical professionals from practicing across state lines. Also calling for the nation to postpone all elective medical procedures. Additionally, regarding changes at the border, we saw Trump say this morning, we will be, by mutual consent, temporarily closing our northern border with Canada to non-essential traffic. Trade will not be affected. Details to follow. Also, as we were filming today, we got the news that the Senate has passed a 2-week paid sick leave bill. And notably, the House also passed that bill earlier this week, and Trump is expected to sign it. Also, very notably, the White House is asking Congress for $1 trillion. This for their coronavirus relief and economic stimulus plan. This reportedly would be for individuals as well as specific industries. $500 billion would be for individual Americans. This, according to a report on Axios, will be done with 2 separate checks of equal amounts, one on April 6th, one on May 18th.
What's up, guys?
Our world is worth fighting for. Right, same.
Let's shoot for a new high score.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
All systems operational. Diva, ready for combat. All right, game face on.
Attackers incoming.
Let's see you get past this.
Stop the pain.
Observe the battle.
Leave it behind.
Hey， 我又回来啦。
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Heroes never die.
Experience tranquility. I love the smell of pulse munitions.
You trying to impress me?
Tactical visor activated.
Triple kill. This fight is not over yet.
The payload has reached the checkpoint.
Ready for transcendence.
Watch this. Deine Valkyrie ist da.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
This was
Heroes never die.
that was cool. Activating self-destruct sequence. Suiting up.
No mistakes.
60 seconds remaining.
All systems check out.
Enemies re-engaging.
This is not bad. Lifesaver.
Helden sterben nicht.
Quadruple kill.
This fight is not over yet.
Overtime.
Take cover.
All systems check out.
Heroes never die.
Game on. 动作不洗澡。
60 seconds remaining.
Activating self-destruct sequence. This was stuck.
30 seconds remaining.
Helden sterben nicht.
洗澡。
Score 0-2. Switching sides. Prepare to attack. Select your hero.
It's a perfect time for some mayhem.
I want to know what Lumerica's been up to.
I am loving this.
Attack commences in 30 seconds.
I can't wait to get into the fight.
Thanks. Good choice.
Think you can keep up with me?
I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation.
On a scale of 1 to 5.
4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing. Escort complete.
Barrier in place. Get over here. Out of existence. Maximum power. Fantastic result. Everyone heal up. Except the number of
Wow.
of course.
Hammer time!
The payload has reached the checkpoint.
Here, get stabilized.
Passing out the welcome mat. Take cover. Worked hard on that.
Deine Valkyrie ist da! Sterben nicht!
Mounting power forward shield.
Heroes never die!
Got you in my sights. That gets better with age.
Vital signs negative.
I am ready to activate the sound barrier.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Get over here and heal up.
entity turned.
I don't play my destination.
Victory. Play of the game. Quadruple kill.
I do now?